Panama City, and we have the honor to present you this webinar about your data safety. Today we have a very interesting person. He's Faiz Shaikh. He's a passionate cloud cybersecurity evangelist, technologist with a specialization in enterprise architecture, strategy, and design. He has 2 decades of experience in IT, infrastructure, data center, virtualization, storage, cybersecurity, and security operations center. Some of his core specialties includes business partnership, vendor management, agile transformation, big data, Internet of Things, cloud, cybersecurity, cryptography, GDPR, and forensics. He also does voluntary at OWASP, Cloud Security Alliance, CIO Water Cooler UK, Elite CIO in India. So, how you see right now, we have a person with a lot of experience and knowledge to share with you. I want to say hi to my friend Yusuf Hassan. He is with us today. How are you? Are you enjoying this
Fine.
morning,
Yes,
Yusuf?
very sunny day here in Panama. How was everything there in India? Please.
Hi everyone. So Faiz here. It's very, I can see, hot and humid in India, summertime mostly, and unpredictable. Some thunderstorm has given us more humidity now. Actually, last 2 3 days. So it's
Oh, here in
usual actually
Panama,
for
there's a
Indian.
lot of humidity too. So we know what are you talking about.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
So well, let's know no more loss of times, and let's begin with the presentation. You can share the presentation, Faiz, to get started.
sure.
Okay, you are streaming right now.
All right. So hi everyone. So today, like I'm honored to be on this podcast by Hugo and Yusuf, especially on the cybersecurity. And as you can see, before I begin the presentation, we all know nowadays security is the prime element across all the enterprises, all the sectors, all the industries, and affecting us worldwide, globally. And I begin my presentation. With what I'm going to cover today, actually, especially the topics which I've chosen. So I've
You
chosen
can
the
you can put there with where there is a height down.
height.
Just give
Height.
it height.
All right.
Height.
All
Yeah.
right.
Fine. Good.
All right. Thank you. So today, the topics which I'm going to cover is like security risk management, the asset security, the communications network, and apart from that, there's more actually on the topic 4, which is the identity and access management. So I'll try to cover all these 4 topics in my upcoming slides. And if you're ready, I would go to the next slide, actually, whereby I begin all of this. So my first slide, it talks about the 3 important pillars of cybersecurity. They are called the 3 triads of cybersecurity, namely confidentiality, integrity, and availability. These are the founding, basic blocks of any cybersecurity programs or initiatives, or application or database, whatever it is, with respect to any organization, any vertical, any business across the world today. So uh, understanding the next slide, I'm going to talk about, like, we understand this each pillar step by step. Actually, the first one we are trying to understand is, like, what is this confidentiality, and actually, what does it mean to the triads, or being the pillar of this, the whole important thing, which is called the pillar of the cybersecurity itself. The principle of having this confidentiality of the data it asserts that the information and the functions which can be only accessed by authorized access only. So if people are not having authorized access to your information or particular data sets, they will be denied. Actually, that's the principle of confidentiality. Now there are some threats to the confidentiality, which is like the hackers out there who are evil minded or nation and state sponsored. There are some masqueraders actually which are hiding behind some advanced penetration threat groups. There's something called as social engineering which is happening nowadays, and there are some unauthorized programs which we employee or anybody downloads on their mobile or systems or servers. So they break this confidentiality. They are the threats to this important pillar of the CIA triad, which is the confidentiality. So if you have any of these elements, which are the red balloons, as you can see in my presentation, they are the threats to the first pillar, which is the confidentiality. And you let me know actually if there's any questions actually on that.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
All right, thank you,
Excellent.
thank you.
Go on.
So I'll I'll move on to the second pillar of the CIA triad, which has been in the industry for almost few decades, and the second one I'm talking about is the integrity. Now the second building block of this pillar, integrity, uh, it is slightly different than the earlier confidentiality. The principle of integrity, it asserts that the information functions can be added. The most important function over here is added, altered, or removed by authorized people and means only. Example, in your daily desktop or laptops, what you can do is, so if you are given a corporate laptop, some software you would need the local admin rights. So since you don't have those rights, you will not be able to install any unauthorized or any downloaded software to your corporate mobile or desktops or even laptops. So this second pillars, which is called the integrity, ensures that those kind of attacks, as you can see in the red balloons, the hackers, the masqueraders, the unauthorized programs which we have downloaded, the social engineering, even if you have downloaded, they will not be able to break the integrity. So breaking the integrity will leads to, again, a weakening of the three pillars. And if anything is weakened, you are explorable, you are vulnerable, and anybody who's looking out for some evil means to hack into your computer systems, database, or network, they could take undue advantage of it, and they could try their evil things onto it. So understanding this integrity is very important. The difference between the confidentiality is like, first thing I talked about, the confidentiality is like, it is by authorized person only. And the second thing in the integrity which I talked about is authorized personnel and their tools only. So only the corporate and the system administrators, network administrators, or enterprise administrators, or even the cloud administrators, they would be only able to make some configuration changes on your system with respect to, like, your account policy. Any company has account lockout policy that if you try 3 attempts or 5 attempts, your account get locked out. So those settings could only be changed by the authorized personnel. That is the main role of the integrity, so that the evil and the other social evil which is out there, the people, bad people, the black hats, the advanced penetration threat, they cannot get into your systems with respect to breaching any of this parameters. Now, as per the second pillars of cybersecurity, and I'll move on if there is no question on to the next slide actually of it. Now, the third and the most important pillars of these three tides of cybersecurity is called availability. We have understood what is confidentiality is, like authorized people and purpose only, and some data which cannot be seen by any unauthorized person will not be seen. Integrity principles we have seen, like it can be only changed by authorized personnel and using authorized, that is genuine software and tools only. No unauthorized software or unauthorized person will not have access to the integrity of the data. The third most important pillar we're talking about is the availability. Now, how does availability differs from integrity and confidentiality? The principle of availability, asserts that the systems and the functions uh, are most important to any organization, and uh, what it does is, uh, it, like any organization is having any software asset or hardware assets or network assets, even the employees and their data is their assets actually. So protecting these assets is one part of it, while making them also available to all the employees, your clients, and everybody who has authorized access request to that, is a part of the availability function. Now, how does this differ with respect to the integrity and availability? Is that, data must be available on demand and according to agreed upon parameters, which is based on the service level for any organization. So based on this, any organization has service level agreements with their internal stakeholders, client, vendors, and what the availability features is one of the third pillar, which makes this systems, this assets, this information. Take an example, your corporate web page. If you click on www.yourcorporatewebsite.com, and the moment you click on it, and you are able to access that website. So by doing, and doing what you call requesting the services, you are able to see those websites, those applications, your corporate emails. So that's the part of the availability, and these three constitutes the most. Yep.
Excuse me, Faiz. One
Yep.
of the most important things here regarding availability, as you said, they agreed upon parameters or service level, because what you see with most companies is that sometimes the owner of a service do not check periodically if the outside party, the third party, is compliant with the service level. And when there is some problem with availability, then it seems that the provider does not seems to comply. So I think this is a very, very important issue here, the compliance of the service levels with the partners, with the companies that give you services. It's very, very important to check that.
Yes, definitely, Yusuf, actually, because I'll just take 1 minute, if you allow me, to give an example. So any company has, let's say, the operations team, who's constantly looking out, and every business unit has service level agreement. So their service level agreement is, once you submit a request to them, you need to, customers, we need to have some acknowledgement actually. So time to respond, time to request, and there are various parameters within the SLAs, and if these are not tied with business. So when we look from the chief information security officer perspective, every element, because time is money in corporate and business, so every unit of time which is getting delayed in those service, it is costing revenue to the company, to your organization, to your clients. So yes, availability is like one of the most important pillars of this triads actually, apart from confidentiality and integrity, which is a must. Availability, we cannot avoid it, but availability is the way, is one of the variable factor. If it drives well within the service level agreements, the organization is making utilization of assets, including time, resources, and all the parameters associated. So thank you. Any other question, Yusuf? All right. So if there's no question, I'll move on to the next slide actually, which is like talking about the governance. What is this governance? Why an organization would need governance actually? Now, governance is something like putting measures and controls to ensure that there are appropriate security activities taking place, there is appropriate monitoring and reporting taking place, there are proper mitigations with respect to the risk which have been identified. There are some parameters which are helping the leadership, mostly the CXO team, in terms of their decision making, like what software is good, what product is good, what security vendor is good, are they serving the purposes, or are they doing their rightful duties actually, or responsibilities whichever they were agreed upon based on their statement of work or service levels actually. And if any organization is having some cybersecurity training and awareness, learning and development programs, and some initiatives which is based on the top down leadership of the company, are they effective when they launch like training and awareness or cyber awareness programs within any company? What happens is that the effectiveness has to be measured. If that is successful, is it working, is it not working, how they are going to improve it. It's like a 360 degree feedback, continuous feedback to those initiatives and programs, whereby the executives take decisions and they could better their cybersecurity posture internally with respect to their employees to start and to begin with. And this all is like giving them the information, the analytics on whether they have made a right investment in particular vendor or a tool. Do they need to kind of have more advanced skilled people on their teams? What kind of skill set are they missing in terms of meeting the evolving threats and the dynamics within the all the industries with respect to the cyber security? So this governance plays this very crucial role in terms of uh, beginning with strategy, then going with tactics, and then delivering it from the operationals and the service delivery levels actually.
From your
So
experience,
uh,
Faiz, you
yeah.
have a lot of experience, have a lot of clients. What do you consider the level of maturity right now regarding governance in companies there in India? In the
See,
Asia.
with respect to, yeah, sure. So I have worked with Indian companies, Asia Pacific, US, East and West Coast, North America, Latin, Middle East. The most important, this governance function is very well understood in all of the continents of the world, including India. It plays very important thing. Now there are some mandatory compliance and standards each country is obliged with respect to their industry. And like to take an example, there is some SAS 70 compliance or SOC compliance, or with respect to, let's say they are doing retails and payments, so FISMA is there, and PCI DSS is there. Everybody talks about this most important word which is called governance. So governance is all about what an organization is doing, have they assessed the security posture, what maturity level. So CMMI actually is for the quality standard, and cyber maturity, CMMC, actually is for the maturity of assessment of an cyber security within a particular company. And each company with respect to different continents of the world, including India, is mandatory obliged to be a part of putting those governance, that is the structure, the people, the process, the initiatives, and the security controls. And also they have to constantly measure it, monitor it, report it every quarter, every month or every week to the respective government local authorities, so that they are not only with compliance but they are also ensuring that their customer data integrity and the key assets of their organization and their country, confidential data, is not passing to somebody unknown, or the ethical ones or the evil ones out there, which is because we see a lot of what do you call nation state sponsored activities with respect to some North Korean groups, some Chinese, some Russian actors, as we can see. Does that answer, Yusuf?
Yeah, go on. Thank you, Faiz.
Yep. So Thank you for that wonderful question, because the governance plays an important role, Yusuf, as we have understood, irrespective of which continent you live in. It is mandatory as per some local laws, local government laws. It is mandatory as per some standards and institution, including financial, educational, healthcare, retail, banking, insurance, tours and travel. Even telecom sectors do have regulations, because certain things actually, if they go beyond some radiation level, it is like a part of the governance committee who steps in and put in terms of some controls and process, so thereby they not only meet the compliance section of it, but they are doing well in terms of the maturity model, which is measured differently across all the organization of the world actually. So I'll move on to the next slide actually. Now this is an interesting slide which I created with respect to understanding something called as information security alignment. What happens is that every organization, the information security is the top priorities with respect to the CEOs, CIOs, and the boards, including the investors also. What they want to see is like some initiatives which are aligned to the organization objectives in terms of their goals, their missions. What are the activities in place, what are the controls to ensure those activities are taking place. If any activity is going out of alignment, how they can put more people, process, or do they need a technology to be invested. The whole purpose of this is asset protection. Now what is this asset is your information data, your employee data, your customers data, your product and services of course are bound to that actually. And what are the processes which are ensuring that these goals and mission and objectives are met, or if they are not being met, as we talked about earlier in our earlier slides, those SLA, the service level agreement, comes into picture. That if somebody is breaching actually in terms of let's say time to respond, instead of 15 minutes it took like 30 minutes for security incident to be responded. That means either there is a lack of resources, like we have put in like 24 by 7 or 16 by 5 model, and maybe the company needs to put more resources globally, or local resources into global model, to ensure that this information security alignment is with respect to the what the chief executive officers or the leadership or the board and investors want. Now every company is having like missions, goals, and objectives. That three constitute together is a part of the IT security organization. Now IT security organization, there is a myth like it is something to do with mostly people or process or technology, but I'll tell you honestly, we have been discussing like almost a decade actually onto this. Security is nothing but the culture of the organization, how an organization responds, how it aligns to the global threats, in terms of intelligence, in terms of prevention, in terms of disclosures as per the mandatory compliance also, and how the risk is reduced actually, so that in case due to unforeseen calamities or natural disasters, or even the advanced penetration threat, how an organization responds to those threats. That's the part of the risk reduction, which is the overall goal of the information security alignment actually. Do you have any questions, Yusuf, on this? All right, so I'll move on to the next one actually. Now, as we have seen, like governance, we have talked about SLAs, we have talked about the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Now, there is something called as information security risk management, which is mostly in various standards referred as IRM actually. Now, if you look at these slides very carefully actually, this I've designed based on the years of experience which I could extract it. The most important is like any organization have strategic, tactical, and operational goals. Now, what leadership wants actually is like, have they taken a due care, some necessary steps with respect to prevention, identification, remediation, identify, detect, protect, and respond, the four pillars as per the NIST framework also. Have they carried out a due diligence? Like, have they ensured by knowing a certain advanced penetration threat. I'll take an example of today's. Nowadays, we know solar wind is having a huge impact on various products and various organizations. Ransomware group is targeting different organization. Microsoft Exchange server is being what you call used as a platform to propagate those kind of ransomware. Now, how are the organization ensuring that this is all properly controlled, their intellectual property is properly protected, and how their employees are responding with respect to those? So that is the part of the due care. If they have known that SolarWinds breach could have affected their Microsoft Exchange server, and they would have carried out the assessment, they would have done necessary steps, taken necessary configuration or updates and patching, those kind of an activities, whereby the risk, the threat could be minimized to any organization. So people who are the organization who are using zero trust framework, or sandboxing, which is an isolation of CPU, memory, and storage in browser or in your laptop and desktop, they could have prevented this kind of an exchange or SolarWind attack, which we have seen rampant nowadays. And the Revil, a ransomware gang is operating. The Ryuk ransomware gang is operating. They are the advanced persistent threat, and they can be avoided if a proper ISRM actually, or information risk management, is in place. Now, how does this thing work? Any companies would have security policies. They have mandatory compliance and standards, which is working with respect to those policies. The data information classification has to be there. We talked about the CIA during the initial start of our podcast. I talked about the confidentiality, integrity, and availability playing the basic pillars actually of cybersecurity stack. Now, the most important thing is, if an organization doesn't know what is important, they are classifying their data, what is personal, what is not personal, what is the intellectual property for that organization, for their product and services to their employees. So there is something called as asset register in any organization. Similarly, there is something called as data classification register also, whereby each asset is tied with business objectives, and their information is classified into confidential, very confidential, or very secret, and those kind of stuff. And these are based on the security guidelines for particular standard, which they need to be mandatory complied. And apart from that, there are various risk man. Yeah.
Sorry, one topic here very important, as you are correctly pointing out. The data information, the data classification is one of the keystones of the security, of the information security management or any risk management. Because if you don't have the data classified, if you do not know which asset is more important than another asset, then you will not have the right control established for that particular asset. So I think this is one of the building blocks, as you correctly said, Faiz, to have all the information classified. And here, what I see here in the local market here in Panama is that there are not a lot of companies that really understand the importance of classifying the data and the importance of having the adequate controls regarding each data classification.
Definitely, Yusuf. I think so. People need to be, more aware, Yusuf, because see, if a company, what does company work on? They work on their assets. What are their assets? Their IT systems, their people, their data is all their asset actually, is a part of, and that is what make any company product or services successful. Now, if those assets are having some part of data, and that is data is being generated constantly or over a period of time. Let's take an example. They have a laptop as one of the asset, and that laptop is used by the chief financial officer of your company. And if the chief financial officer of the company has company revenues, projections, and everything on the laptop, so that data is important. Is definitely tied with that asset, which is the laptop. But if the classification of that data is missing, imagine if that laptop is just attacked by the evil ransomware people, and the data is lost and there is no backup, or there is no encryption, there is no way to retrieve the data, it is a financial loss to the organization. So yes, definitely data classification, information classification is one of the heart, actually core of IRM actually. If any organization, they are very serious about information security, they need to have at least two kind of register. One is asset register, second thing is asset then linked with that data, with data classification. Unless companies work on these two things, the whole stack is incomplete. That's the reason I created this kind of interdependent presentation, where you can see how one thing is
Your example
connected
is
to two.
very
Yeah.
good example. Yes,
And
with the gears.
yeah, and how it is just that after having data classification, it doesn't stop over there. The company needs to have some initiatives program, whereby they need to keep broadcasting using HR, using administrative teams about the security awareness. If the employees are made constantly, weekly or a monthly awareness kind of a session, or as in when the industry in security happens, they would be aware that what steps to take, whether to download an malicious file from the web, PDF file, or any other file, or how should they behave. Because most important thing we know in the cybersecurity, they say the human is the weakest factor. What I believe, humans are the strongest factor actually. In fact, if you look at according to what I say, because we humans have emotions. These cybersecurity attackers, they're playing with human emotions of a suddenness of something wow factor, and we are clicking on it. Hey, you have won some 1 billion US dollar from XYZ company, and it is waiting for you. You just need to click in. So they are using human, they are exploiting human emotions actually. So if we make our employee aware, actually, what happens is that awareness will, what you call, reduce the risk, which is any employees will not click on malicious link, they will not share any malicious or unwanted software on their laptops or even the mobile, and using the container, which is like an isolation services. Even if somebody download it, it will not propagate to the whole enterprise of it. And that is what always is the core of security leadership vision and commitment. Like, the leadership is all talking about, they need to know what is happening with respect to our organization, what is happening with respect to a particular industry. Are we updated? If our competitors have got breached, what is the chance that we will also not get breached? And what are the threats to our industry? What are specific threats to us, and what are the steps we are taking? How can we prevent ourselves, in terms of getting into a
Yeah, you are
seamless
right.
situations.
Yes, you are right. Okay, go on. Good.
All right,
Very
thank
clear.
you.
Very
So if there is no question, I'll yeah.
yes.
So the main purpose, I'll summarize quickly, is like, the reducing risk is the main goal of the leadership vision, which is taken care with respect to policies, procedures, classification, guidelines, risk management, and awareness programs. And if these five elements are taken care with due care and due diligence, that is what will make any organization more secure. Be ready for the unknown threats which are out there actually, because we never know, tomorrow we wake up, our website could be defaced. Okay, banner grabbing, which is called in hacking thing, and some employee would click on link and download the, what you call, weaponized PDF actually, which could download any malicious ransomware, and the corporate system could be affected. So all, it is all, not only the defensive approach, it is kind of an attack mindset also, whereby we have to continuously do a threat hunting internally to find out if our certain ports are open, certain applications are vulnerable, and how we report them to the central agencies, also federal agencies. Like, if we discovered something unusual activity on our company's domain portal or websites or servers, how do we do a report actually? Because every country is having those kind of an emergency response team, which is definitely led by the government initiatives, because they also need to be aware of this threat landscape to particular businesses. Because if it is attacking
Yes,
you,
yes,
tomorrow it could attack the same industry actually. That is most important part of it.
yes. We are clear. Good point.
All right, thank you. So I'll I'll move on to this next slide, and I'm sure we already discussed about this, but here I'm just trying to, depict it uh, and making it understand by more in terms of what is, the information security service level agreement. So normal service agreement is all about time to respond, time to acknowledge what action has been done, is it repeating continuously, or is it occurred earlier, kind of standard operation procedure book where the analyst could look into it. So we see one side of the group as client, the other is the service provider. Now the service provider have to advertise their services using service catalog. Once they have the service catalog, like these are the kind of services which is available from my team or my group, the clients would know what service to request. Like they would request a password request or email to be created. When a new employee joins into any organization, there is an integration HR tool. Okay, when because HR has to fill the information of that employee, the age, the kind of group, the kind of access control that person is going to join is going to have, and that is created help with the help of integrated tool as kind of a service request. Then the HR selects it, it automatically sends that information to HR group, to the finance group, to the IT team. So IT team does it, create email, create an email name, create a password, uh, create a policy, HR creates a welcome kit, finance team creates an financial banking account, or if already account is existed, they try to integrate with their system. So many things happen actually, at all this level.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
organ
we know. Yes, we know.
and in imagine if somebody, let's say, the HR forgets to create this kind of a initiative or a request in the system, what happens? The employee is joining the next day, imagine that, and he doesn't have system, he doesn't have HR welcome kit or policy, because nowadays we are into pandemic, so it is all done via web. But if it that those welcome kit, those go instructions to the new employee of do's and don't, if they don't get it, what an experience actually will be for that employee to join that company. How would he think about that company security posture? So that is where this SLAs comes into picture, because if somebody within the whole chain breaks in, it is a problem of the process and the system. So the leadership is very keen in terms of breaking this change, or even doing some enhancement, so that the user experience, that is the customer experience, that is the employee experience, get enhanced using the continuous service feedback actually. This is what I try to explain using the information security SLA.
Okay. Okay, I think, Faiz, we will have to move on because of the time constraints. If we can go faster.
All right, sure. All right. So now I'm talking about something called as every company is having this third party the governance. The only difference, between the normal governance is like internal governance is with respect to the internal employees, the companies, and the stakeholders. Third party governance is again the same thing, but third party, vendors actually they have to put in their risk catalog within terms of having loss of information accountability and compliance actually. And apart from that, based on that, the any organization takes on their decision with respect to secure outsourcing. Is it on-site assessment, example, document executive and reviews actually, policy and procedure reviews, and then based on their awarding and rewarding system, a particular third party vendor is assessed, their risks are assessed, and it is mitigated, and then the contract is signed and outsourced to them in terms of third party governance. Does that make sense? All right, so I'll move on to the next one. Is like now there are types of security policies. Every company, as we have been talking about, needs to have some security policies in place. So there are three types of security policies. One is like industry specific. Example, banking will have PCI DSS, healthcare will have HIPAA, and your country based and local government based, or the standard and compliance based. Some will be advisory, as we know from the Cloud Security Alliance. There is a kind of an advisory bulletin would get published based on the security and the threat landscape. And some will be informative is only within the organization. Hey, have your password secure, have your password frequently change. Don't share your password, don't share your confidential data with your next employees. You have to keep everything confidential with you only, and you don't have to speak to the public forums, you don't have to disclose it to the social media and all the so and so stuff, the do's and don'ts stuff that is informative, that is organization specific, and that is mostly awareness driven. On the advisory, it is mostly to control the behavior. Example, your medical and personal record, in terms of who needs to be disclosed, it has to be disclosed with the HR people only, or the account and the administration teams only, or your tax information with the finance teams only. And this is what I've tried to explain in terms of the security policies for any organization. And I'll move on to the next one, which is like I'm trying to explain the IRM, that is Information Risk Management Lifecycle. So there are, in case any organization get breached, they have some threat event. They do, the next level they do is the threat impact assessment, and they measure the threat frequency. Is it a new one, or is it mostly occurring, or regularly occurring within certain interval? Is there an uncertainty of it? What are the risks actually, and what are those mitigations which a company could take? And apart from that, what is the annualized cost to implement those standards, policy, procedures, or even new resources to be onboarded? And there is a cost benefit analysis. So the first goal is like, as we've been talking about, is asset information value assignment. This is done on your assets register, your data classification. The second goal is the risk analysis assessment, which is based on those risk which is out there by certain advanced penetration threat. Let's say your laptop or your system or your desktop or your network server or your routers and switches is vulnerable. So is it in top one threat or top two, or priority three? So those kind of analysis and assessment is there for easy decision making. And what are the countermeasures which a company could take, and how they could select and implement those, maybe in phased wise manner, maybe immediately, because some require immediate configuration changes. Take an example, solar wind definitely triggered an immediate one, and then think about the long term and the proactive ones also.
What is the best approach there, Faiz, regarding uncertainty? Because you have threat event, threat impact, threat frequency, uncertainty in the equation, and then you have the risk
Yeah,
mitigation. How do you deal with that uncertainty?
uncertainty is like, uh, you know you always, a company has to think, always be prepared of the unforeseen, uncertain events actually, because that is the gray area for every organization. How there are process in terms of identify, protect, and detect those kind of event which are not very frequent. Let's say somebody is trying to scan port of your corporate server, and you see that only one time activity within 1 week. So it will be like, in a week you have 10,000 log, and there will be one log which says somebody from, let's say, India is trying to scan a port on your server. What has to be done is that those cybersecurity or SOC analysts, they have to be educated, they have to be well equipped with respect to tools. They have to report it to the incident response team, and incident response team has to look it very carefully and very seriously. Though it is a one time incident, it is an uncertainty, they will scan back or attack back. But what if they are doing it on a purpose, they don't want to get detected? Because the fourth principle in ethical hacking is to remove your footprints, to stay in stealth mode. So this uncertainty can be dealt using one of the approach which I told. So because there are threat event triggers the threat, the logs actually. So we have to measure the impact, we have to look at the frequency, we also have to find an equation. So there are various mathematical equation in terms of finding this uncertainty, and how to do the risk mitigation and cost benefit analysis, and then how we can put in terms of those measures and controls, so that if tomorrow we address or we face that uncertain threats, we are at least ready with 50%, 60%, 70% kind of a one. Does that answer, Yusuf? So is there any questions actually, Yusuf, further on this?
Yes, sorry, I was muted. Yes, your explanation
Right.
is very good. We have to take into account that that when we are working in risk management and other areas, cybersecurity is one of the areas that maybe is not so easy to quantify the impact, the risk, because most organizations don't have a 10-year data information from 10 years. So what I have seen is that when you do, for example, a risk assessment in a matrix, uh, you do like a qualitative assessment because it's very hard
Yes.
sometimes to do a quantitative assessment when you don't have like 10 years of data that you can visualize. Okay, if I have a ransomware attack, it will cost me $1 million.
Yes.
If I have a virus attack, well, it will cost me like $2 million. So most companies don't have that data. So you have to do a qualitative assessment. And in that qualitative assessment, all the uncertainty is something that will cause some noise to management where you try to explain them the impact because you don't have data on which information you can work about.
Yes, definitely, Yusuf. You're correct, actually. Both the qualitative and the quantitative assessment should be in place for any organization, and for those organization, and those leadership people
Hi, do you hear
who
me?
are, yeah. Are you able to hear me? Hello,
Hello,
hello.
do you
I'm
hear
able
me?
to hear
Do you
you.
hear?
I'm able to hear you. Hello, Yusuf. Are you able to hear me? Hello, I'm able to hear you. Hello, are you able to hear me? We lost Hugo.
Hello?
Hello, Hugo.
Able to hear? Yes, we are
Yes,
able
we
to
are
hear
hearing
you.
you. We're hearing you.
We can
Okay,
hear you.
you can put
All right.
back your presentation so we can see your information.
Yeah.
Yes, great.
So, Yusuf, you were saying about the qualitative and quantitative assessment actually with respect to different things. I'll just give you one hint and some shortcuts. So every industry, the companies, nowadays are having the benchmark that if a certain industry sector, one system get compromised, what is the revenue loss cost tied with respect to those assets. So that is the benchmark or baseline which we any organization can use. Then they can make their own quantitative and qualitative assessment, both actually using cost benefit analysis tied together, and they can give, there is something called as assigning cost weights to those information or data or systems asset, and then the risk factors could be calculated, and based on that, what is the stopgap arrangement which an organization can take in terms of either they need people, they need a process, they need technologies, or they need some third party vendor. So those decision making things definitely help. And yes, definitely qualitative and quantitative analysis both has to be performed, but it is situation based, it is dependent in terms of the organization maturity. If the organization is mature, the leader have understood it very well, they would be very much proactive in terms of doing that. So thank you, Yusuf and Hugo, for having me today on this wonderful, podcast of cybersecurity. And here's my contact detail. And I thank you, everybody, whomsoever this has benefited in terms of information awareness, information security awareness. I could be easily reached in my email address, which is faiz@digitalsoftlabs.com. I'm mostly active on LinkedIn, whereby I love sharing knowledge on information security around the world to all the professionals and connected people. And I'm very passionate and in terms of hands-on with respect to the technologies, as well as especially on the cybersecurity. So if you have any questions, I could be reached on LinkedIn or on my email address, whichever the best possible way to help you in terms of even addressing for any organization or a career roadmap, career guidance on cybersecurity, or in terms of threat intelligence platform and everything actually. Thank you Hugo, thank you Yusuf for such a wonderful podcast.